hello everybody. Good evening. Welcome to a Mexican Crossing Lines. Tonight's show is called Intelligence. We'll be going in a bit. As soon as we get some people on this feed, we're live streaming on Facebook, YouTube at Duke1517, and on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines. Invite your friends, invite your enemies. Get some people onto this stream.
Welcome, everyone. Come on in.
If you're driving around Fargo-Moorhead, if you want to give us a buzz and leave a message on our message line, you can call 701-566-0917. Again, that's 701-566-0917. And you're listening to KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo-Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
We try to bring some local color, if you know what I mean.
That's right. Now every night on KPPP LP 88.1, we have Cheryl Underwood from 7 to 9. It's a rebroadcast from the early morning show that airs from 4 to 8 in the morning. So if you're driving around in the evening, listening to the radio, you can get Cheryl Underwood, 4 different segments every hour, music in between.
How was everybody's weekend?
Weekend from the weekend.
We got some raking done. Garden prep.
Yeah, then it got cold again. Turned it back into winter. It was spring for 2 days, and now it's winter again.
It was fake spring.
Yep.
Fake you out spring. Got a little bit of snow today. It's chilly.
Yep.
I can't wait for the real spring to be here. I'm excited. We got some gardening. Got some seedlings.
That's right.
Going.
The squash is up.
Welcome, everybody, to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo-Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And today, we have a show about intelligence. And not just the kind in your brain, but also our intelligence apparatus as a government, as a country. It brings us information about what's going on. What are other countries trying to find out about our country? What, nefarious actions are going on within our own country to try to destabilize us or, overthrow our government, interfere with our elections, influence our politics, etc., right? We're constantly having to look at different threats. I don't know if folks in this area are aware, but there was a hack recently. The governor of North Dakota was just talking about this. He mentioned the fact that there was a security breach in the state of North Dakota where the Chinese, I can't remember, communist, let's call it Chinese Communist Army, or, the
Chinese military.
The Chinese military hacked the state of North Dakota, various cities, and I think it was, I want to say Williston, but it's one of the towns that starts with a W. The entire town, their emails, their information they're all hacked. The Chinese could have been using their emails to do God knows what. They still don't have it under control. They don't know how it happened. And these kinds of things are happening, you know, on a fairly regular basis. There are people trying to hack American business websites. So you've told me, as you monitor our own website, that there are people from different countries, governments even, can be messing with your internet, with your security, with your websites.
Oh, yeah. It's very common to have all sorts of bots coming in and people just trying to find vulnerabilities in the software that's used for the websites. And it's very common for those breaches to happen. You can pay for really good security, through your ISP. But at the same time, we get some days we get like hundreds and hundreds of people trying to upload files, break in, try to find a way to take over our website, basically. And there's many, many different reasons they would do that, but it's very, very common to have your sites, being bombarded. That's why people are really doing VPNs these days, which gives people a lot of security.
Now, I prefaced all of this because I don't know how common people realize this is. That you just have to have security in place. You have to take measures to protect your websites, your information, your data online. Whether you're an individual, a nonprofit organization like the People's Press Project that runs this radio station, or a city government in the state of North Dakota, or our federal government.
Yeah.
Right? These are things that constantly need updating, monitoring, and protecting. And, we're going to talk about the newest information that was just released in a report about our country's elections and the security of those elections. What were some of the findings from this report? I'm just going to give you a snapshot of that. We've also recently learned that during the Trump administration, the CDC was putting out, the Trump administration was putting out forged CDC guidance. In other words, they were pretending that it came out from the CDC when it did not.
Wow.
So we're going to look at that. We're also getting new information and intelligence about the insurrection on January 6th. Of course, that investigation is continuing and unfolding. So I'm going to give you some updates on what we have learned, newer things we have learned, especially with regard to the killing of police officer Sicknick. 2 people have been arrested in that case. And so we are going to take a look at what new developments we know about that investigation and the people involved in the insurrection, as well as the findings of this report with regard to the elections, and another report from MIT which looked at 20 years of data on election fraud, real election fraud. We're going to look at the numbers and see what, how common it is, so that we can appropriately address the issue. But first, I want to thank all of our listeners, all of our viewers. We couldn't do the work that we do here at the station without your support. And if you want to help to keep independent, local radio production happening, how can they do that, dude?
Well, they can do it many ways, and we do appreciate the support. I mean, there's been people that have been hanging with us for 3 or 4 years. And we've done a variety of reporting from, Standing Rock, local issues, all sorts of things we've done over the years. And we really appreciate people watching, listening. We're a nonprofit radio station in Fargo-Moorhead, and we've done the live streams, basically internationally and in the United States, Mexico, everywhere. So thank you all for hanging with us. And if you would like to get a hold of us, you probably know the routine, but maybe you're new. So you can email Cindy at kpppfm.com. Okay, let's do that one more time. Cindy at kpppfm.com. And it's me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. kpppfm.com is our website. You can go there and look at our old shows and poke around at some of our programming. Also, if you'd like to make a non-taxable donation to our organization, you can go to kpppfm.com/donate.
//
/donate. And please do that. And also, you're probably seeing us on one of our platforms. We're here on Facebook at 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, and then we're on YouTube at Duke1517, and we're on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines. So you can also call us on our message line, leave a message, 701-566-0917. That way you can just leave your lovely voice. We may put it on the air. You have something to say it.
Okay, let's start off with the arrests in the Officer Sicknick case. There have been two men, one by the last name of Cotter and the other by the last name of Tanios, Julian Ellie Cotter, age 32, of Pennsylvania, and George Pierre Tanios, age 39, of Morgantown, West Virginia, both arrested for assaulting Capitol Police after Brian Sicknick was sprayed with bear spray during the January 6th Capitol insurrection. As you know, Officer Sicknick died. We don't know, because we have not been told exactly what killed Officer Sicknick. We were first told that he had his head bashed in, possibly or probably by a fire extinguisher. There was a lot of speculation as to that. Other reports said that he had been overcome by some kind of chemical irritant, that played a role in killing him. I'm not entirely sure, but what we do know is that officers like Officer Fannin, who survived, said it was like gladiator, barbarian fighting that was going on.
Yeah.
He was tasered by a man and that gave him a heart attack, and he was nearly killed. He said that he was going to be shot with his own weapon, and that he begged for his life and said that he had children. I mean, the harrowing experiences that we heard from the officers that survived give us a glimpse into the horrible, terrifying way in which Officer Brian Sicknick died.
Yeah.
It must have been horrific. It must have been terrifying. And for him, a Trump supporter. Officer Brian Sicknick was a Republican, a Trump supporter. For him to be a Republican, a conservative, a Trump supporter, a voter for Trump, to die in that fashion, attacked by a mob of people that were using flagpoles, the American flag and Trump flags, to beat people, to beat officers. Over 100 officers were injured in some way or another. Some of them had snapped vertebrae in their spines, in their spinal columns. Some of them had concussions, brain injuries. Some of them lost limbs, fingers, eyes. Some of them have and will continue to have PTSD for the rest of their life because of the trauma. And yet, we don't know exactly how Officer Sicknick was killed. What we do know about these two gentlemen was that, according to the charging documents, they were working together to spray police with this bear spray or this chemical irritant. It's not clear from the charging documents whether it was actual bear spray. Have you ever used bear spray?
No. But if it's a chemical that would be used to deter bears, they're huge mammals. They're huge animals. It would be very strong for a human being to encounter that. Basically, they were doing chemical warfare on people, of spraying. They call it an irritant. I mean, this stuff collapses your lungs. I mean, it's what they were using and spraying had long sprays. I remember they showed some of these videos and we saw people spraying stuff, and it's like,
well, you're gonna if you were gonna use it for a bear, you got to get the bear from a long distance away. You can't get right up on the bear.
That's right,
because you may not be able to get that spray on the bear.
Yeah, I think it's disgusting that they even did that. That they even brought in that sort of thing, and that was going to be their thing. They're going to spray people with chemicals, which basically is making them incapacitated and death. This guy died.
He died. And he wasn't the only officer to lose his life. The next day, an officer committed suicide. 2 officers have since killed themselves, in addition to Officer Brian Sicknick, who died at the hands of the mob. We know that the guy that put his legs up on Nancy Pelosi's desk also had a cattle prod. We also know that one of the people that died, remember, a half a dozen people died besides Officer Brian Sicknick on the day of the insurrection. Trump supporters lost their lives, right? There was the woman that tried to go through the Capitol window.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia, what was her name? Babbitt?
Oh, yeah.
Allie Babbitt, I think her name was. And then there was the man who had a taser in his pocket that went off when he was trying to remove a portrait of a former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, from the wall, presumably to steal it. I don't know. And tasered himself in the scrotum.
Yeah.
And killed himself. There were other weapons at the Capitol. This was not a protest, ladies and gentlemen. It may have started as a protest.
Yeah, the protest was a cover.
But the fact of the matter is that there were armed militia within this quote-unquote protest. And many of the people that were in that group of people that went over to the Capitol during the riot, during the insurrection, were armed, had prepared, had planned, right? Not all of them, but a large number of the people that were breaking into the Capitol, that were arm to arm in a military formation. Some of the very first people that got into the Capitol, including the QAnon shaman, they were prepared, trained. They had a plan that they executed. They were wearing radios, right? They had tactical gear. They had flex cuffs, right? They had flex cuffs. They had spears. They had baseball bats. They had all sorts of different things. They also stole people's shields. Why am I regurgitating all of this information? Because we are being gaslighted by members of Congress, the latest of which was on a radio program, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, saying this. Listen for yourselves to Ron Johnson. We'll have him in a moment here, perhaps, maybe. Ron Johnson is the senator from Wisconsin.
Yep.
And in the video, that's the CNN video.
Okay.
So we need the one of Ron Johnson. I'll let you try and find that for us real quick. That's the one about the CDC.
Well, just hold on a second. For some reason, It's not coming up.
Okay.
But you entertain the people for a moment.
Okay, well, let me tell you more about this video that we're about to hear in a moment. Ron Johnson, who has previously made the rounds, you will recall that Ron Johnson previously said that he did not think that this was an armed insurrection. He said,
That's
was
right.
there any guns?
Yeah.
Was there any weapons?
I remember that guy. I do have that video.
Here's the video, and this is what he said on the radio show.
White supremacists, they don't really believe that, but they know there's a percentage of those that they're telling that will believe it. That's really the game, right? I mean, there's no way people that you go to work with every day really think that you and I are white supremacists because we believe in conservative values, right?
Well, no, and let's face it, I'm also criticized because I've made the comment that on January 6th, I never felt threatened, because I didn't. And mainly because I knew that even though those thousands of people there were marching to the Capitol were trying to pressure people like me to vote the way they wanted me to vote, I knew those are people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. And so I wasn't concerned. Now, had the tables been turned, and Joe, this got me in trouble. Had the tables been turned and President Trump won the election, and those were tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been a little concerned.
Wow. That's a big statement, but it's a true statement. We see the recent history.
Well, and let's face it, people didn't board up their storefronts in metropolitan areas in case Joe Biden won. And now you take a look at what's happening in Minneapolis with the trial.
Okay.
Wow.
I just want to kind of pull that apart, okay? Because he was conflating protests where people did not show up armed, right? Where people did not try to overthrow the government of the United States. Yes, maybe they burned, maybe they looted, but they did not try to overthrow the government. These are two very different things. One is the highest crime in the land. One is the highest crime that you can commit against your own country, which is actually punishable by death, according to the law. That's how heinous of a crime being a traitor to your country is. And the other is protesting. Protesting in city after city after city. Yes, it happened for a long time. Yes, it caused a lot of destruction. I do not condone looting, rioting, burning people's businesses, putting people at risk, and yes, putting people's lives on the line. I don't condone any of it. I think all of it is dangerous and put people at risk. For those of you who've been watching me for a long time, when people were going from Standing Rock, when people that were watching our programs, that were activists, that were protesters, that were, organizers, wanted to go to the protest in Charlottesville, wanted to take people out there, since lots of people from Standing Rock were going to these different protests. I said, there's going to be confrontations. They're going to be violent. They may be deadly. Do not take people there. Do not put them at risk. A lot of people listened.
Yep.
I feel that we saved people's lives because there was a death at that protest. Let me just tell you, I take umbrage to what Senator Johnson is doing here. Not only because of what he is saying, which is a patent lie. When he says, I was not scared because I knew that those thousands of people that were there love this country. How do you love the country that you are trying to overthrow the government of?
Yeah.
Is that how you show love? By trying to kill the vice president of your own party? By trying to kill members of Congress, smear feces on the walls of the greatest institution, the people's house? Right? And throw our government over. I don't understand how he can say those two things. How he can say that a person that wants to overthrow our government and kill its leaders love our country. I don't know how the man can say that these are people that love and defend and protect law enforcement when they killed an officer and almost killed several others. When they put the lives of officers at risk, when officers and former military were present at an insurrection to kill their fellow law enforcement. He's gaslighting us when he is telling us that these people do not mean any harm to law enforcement. Let me tell you what we're finding more and more. What we're finding more and more is that there are a number of people that either are ex-military or law enforcement or who pretended to be law enforcement. These are people that participated in the insurrection who are being charged, who are being arrested, who are being investigated, and many of them have assault, confrontations with law enforcement on a number of occasions where they show an utter disregard for the law and disrespect of law enforcement. Let me tell you about the latest. One such man is Dennis Bauer. Danielle Bauer is a woman who told deputies that she was traveling on a highway and she went through a yellow light at an intersection and noticed a silver Hummer accelerate and turn on a red light behind her. The man who pulled her over, a man by the name of Worrell is his last name, he showed her a gold badge and told her to roll down her window. This woman, Danielle Bauer, happens to be a police dispatcher. And she knew that that was a fake badge and that this guy was pretending to be a cop. So this guy began yelling at her and telling her that she ran a red light. And he was arrested. She knew he was a fake cop, so she had him arrested. She told him, "I know you're a fake cop." He tried to, he ran away from that situation. But when he was arrested, this is very disturbing, he was found with a Glock, handcuffs, a badge, knives, and pepper spray. What do you suppose this man, who obviously was stopping women, right?
Yeah.
What do you think he was doing besides impersonating a cop?
Well, he wasn't hunting, that's for sure.
Why would he have a
Glock?
A Glock, a concealed firearm badge, 3 Glock magazines, 2 pairs of handcuffs with keys, 100 extra rounds of 40 caliber ammunition, multiple 12 gauge shotgun shells, 2 pocket knives, a can of pepper spray, and a flashlight? Why did he need all of that? If he's just pretending to be a cop. These people are supposedly the people who Ron Johnson says are patriotic, law-abiding cop lovers. And by the way, here's another arrested person by the name of Guy Reffitt. Do you remember this guy? His real name is Guy, G-U-I.
Okay.
Guy Reffitt was arrested recently. This is the guy, the literal guy, whose son appeared on television after he became very scared and reported his own dad to the police. Remember the kids that said that their dad threatened to kill them if they narked out their rioting father? This is the guy. Guess what he also told his friends? Reffitt told family members and associates that he had a loaded gun with him at the Capitol.
Wow.
And that he knew others there were armed as well. We saw that. We saw video of people rioting, pulling up their pants and showing a gun in their waistband. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
We saw television footage live of that. Where was Ron Johnson? How did he miss all of the weapons that were clearly visible, including cattle prods and guns, How can he lie so blatantly to us, to American people, and tell us there weren't weapons? This wasn't an armed insurrection. Take a look at this. He said, not an armed insurrection. That's the previous graphic. If you could go to the next one. It's a quote from Ron Johnson where he said, the fact of the matter is, this didn't seem like an armed insurrection to me. I mean, armed. When you hear armed, don't you think of firearms? No, I think of any kind of weapon that can be used to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question I would like to ask. How many firearms were confiscated? How many shots were fired? I'm only aware of one.
Well, man.
Just because everyone that had a weapon on them didn't fire their weapons doesn't mean that there weren't more weapons there. Just because they weren't able to handcuff or kidnap or kill more members of Congress or more police officers that day doesn't mean that this was not an armed insurrection. What Ron Johnson and others have been doing to try to make us believe that we are not, these are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. The insurrection didn't happen.
I know, and you can just tell he's lying. That this guy, he's, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. It's like, that man would have been scared. If anyone that would have been in the hallways during what was going on, when we were watching it live on TV, you couldn't see much of the stuff that was happening. You saw all these people doing this stuff, and it looked pretty bad. But as the videos have come out, where people, showing the details and the hundreds of officers who've been hurt and maimed, this Johnson guy, he would have been shaking in his boots if he would have been in the hallways with all those people that were basically breaking arms, breaking noses, and spraying stuff and beating people up. He would have been frightened. I just don't believe him, and he's just trying to spin this thing to make it sound so insignificant that this thing isn't even worth talking about.
Well, this is the same Ron Johnson who refused to acknowledge that Biden had won the election.
That's right.
For weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Long after it was pretty clear that there was nothing that was going to stop the inauguration of the new president, Biden. And this is the same Ron Johnson who took a trip on the 4th of July, along with other GOP members, to go and visit Russia. Same guy. And it's all part and parcel of this. I don't know. I can't call it a misinformation because they're outright lies about what happened during the election.
That'd be disinformation then.
It's not even disinformation. It feels like it's an operation.
Ah, okay.
It feels like it's a propaganda. Because how do you erase what we saw on January 6th? How do you lobotomize your brain so that you can forget what you experienced and you saw? Everyone in America was watching the insurrection happen on live television.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't imagine it. Just like we didn't imagine what happened during the pandemic, the handling of the pandemic.
That's right.
What we know now is that we have about a quarter of the population that has been vaccinated with at least one shot.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to reach, we've already exceeded 100 million people, 100 million doses of vaccine. The president said he was going to achieve that in his first 100 days. We're not even at 70 days yet, right? He still has plenty of time to rip through that goal and far, far exceed it. And yesterday, Dr. Fauci was practically rolling himself into a pretzel to praise Trump in an effort to get Trump to help vaccinate Republicans.
Yeah.
Because guess what, Duke? About 40% of Republican men say they're not going to get the vaccine. Here's another thing, and this extends out to the law enforcement community and to the corrections community. Now that they're going to try to get vaccinations into institutions, into prisons, etc., they're finding that the officers, the correctional officers there, and law enforcement and firefighters, and there's a percentage of them, many of them are conservatives, right, who will not get the vaccine. This is going to put us in at a greater risk of the continuation of the propagation of infection of this very deadly virus and the variants that could
That's
come.
right. Yeah. I'm really afraid of the mutated viruses because of that. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that these cowards, and I'll call them cowards, aren't going to get vaccinated because they don't believe some things about it. And I think they don't want to participate in society and the things that we need to do to help improve our communities and to get out of this thing. Does everyone want to live another year or two like we have for the past year? I say no, get vaccinated.
Well, a lot of them have heard the QAnon conspiracy stuff. They think that there is, some kind of control. I don't know if it's a microchip or what it is, but that they think that Bill Gates wants to control us through the vaccination. I don't know why the same conspiracies about the efficacy and the control and the chips and all this weird stuff that goes along with the COVID vaccine isn't applied to the polio vaccine, the smallpox vaccine, the HPV vaccine, the, name anything, mumps, measles, rubella, any disease, Ebola, any of the different diseases that we have stopped, eradicated from being a scourge on the humans and this planet. It just defies logic because we have been using vaccinations and we have required people to take those vaccinations in this country in order to study, to do business, to get hired for different jobs, and to interact in society, including traveling. This has been requirements that we have already imposed on our populations on this planet, in this country, with other vaccination programs. For some reason, this one is different. And I don't understand. What's really disturbing, Duke, is that we learned earlier in the month, last month, that despite the fact that Trump and many of the people in his administration were sowing seeds of doubt about the vaccine, about the country of, where it originated, about the CDC, about Dr. Fauci, and, casting aspersions on everything from mask wearing to, needing to social distance and close businesses and secure people's health. We found out that Trump did get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And so did Melania, and so did Mark Meadows, and so did McEnany, and so did a bunch of the people that refused to acknowledge the severity of the pandemic and who did not take action to protect themselves and others at the White House from this pandemic spreading amongst their own administration. We found out they got the vaccine right away. A bunch of them did. Well, guess what? There is new information about that. Turns out, Duke, that not only were a bunch of the people in the Trump administration vaccinated, Trump staffers, even those who worked for officials who publicly were flouting coronavirus safety guidelines, were secretly behind the scenes scrambling to Jared Kushner's office to get COVID-19 vaccines from a stash. Jared Kushner had a stash of vaccines that were held from the public, that were withheld from the public.
Wow.
You know that for every, and remember at the time, at first we heard when the vaccine was starting to get rolled out, the first thing that we heard from this administration, from this anti-vaxxer, anti-masker, anti-CDC guidelines, anti-science presidency and administration, what we heard right away was, we're all going to get the vaccine here at the White House pretty soon. Immediately that was met with a bunch of backlash. People were furious. Like, what? The anti-masker, anti-science, anti-vax guy is going to make everybody in the White House get the vaccine? So then Trump tweeted right away about that, and he said, we're not going to do that. We will get the vaccine at the appropriate time, but we're not going to go first. Because you know that every vaccine that was taken by anyone in Trump's administration or at the White House at a time when people are dying in droves in nursing homes means that shot doesn't go into the arm of a vulnerable elderly person.
That's right.
And yet, we now know Trump got the vaccines. A bunch of people in his administration got the vaccine. Jared had a stash of vaccines.
Wow.
And guess what? There was a bunch of people jumping in the front of the line, trying to get to the front of the line to get the vaccine. So why is Trump and all of the people in his circle pretending that they don't want the vaccine, that they don't care about the vaccine, that they're not going to jump in line to get the vaccine? Meanwhile, in the background, they're all jumping in front of the line to get the vaccine. Why is that? Is it because they want to save face? Because honestly, I don't know why you would want to put Republican men in jeopardy. Their lives are going to be in jeopardy.
Well, they're all liars. I mean, this is just, they were scared. They're scared they're going to get this disease and die. And so they are, squirreling away some vaccines, vaccinate themselves, and then act like it's no big deal to the rest of the world because they're liars. And what they did, they set this in motion that people to this day, I think Trump was even saying something today. He says, yeah, people should get the vaccine. And people are saying, no. Did? Yeah. I saw it on Berg's page, that he's
good.
Fauci got to him, I guess.
Good.
And now, but people, all the comments on that page underneath this statement, they were like, I'm not getting one. No, that's the worst thing you've ever said, President Trump. And it's like, people are like, I'm not going to do that because he already let the genie out of the bottle a long time ago, and you can't put it back in. It's going to be hard to reverse this stuff because he's been lying to people all this time.
Well, and to the degree that he hasn't specifically lied about the vaccinations, he has been closely allied to people that are spreading conspiracy theories about the vaccine and about Bill Gates and about, all the QAnon stuff. He hasn't disavowed it. He hasn't said, True. That's nonsense. That's a lie. That's not the science. I got the vaccine. You should too. Because he would have to actually tell people, we told you a lie. We fibbed, we embellished, or whatever. But the fact is that unless the president comes clean and people in the Republican Party come clean about this vaccine, people are going to continue to lose their lives. And America may not be safe for a very long time because of it.
Exactly.
And we already went through hell during 2020 when we couldn't get clear guidance. We couldn't get protection. Now we have all these states opening up. We just had a crazy person go into a business the day after Governor Abbott in Texas told people that they would be lifting that mask mandate everywhere in the state, and had a violent confrontation with business owners. Why are people like that dog whistling to their supporters, conservatives, Trump supporters? Why are they dog whistling to put people in a civil war setting during a pandemic? That's what's happening. They're pitting people against people. Go out there and don't wear a mask and get arrested and get in people's faces and cough on people. Did you see that video of the Uber driver that was attacked?
Yeah.
This is what those members of Congress, those politicians, That is what they're dog whistling. Those people that are anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers, what they're signaling isn't opening up the economy. They're signaling violence. They're signaling and dog whistling. Go get into a violent confrontation. Go get into a clash. And you know what? This is what was going on during the Trump administration. They were doctoring the CDC guidelines. I hope that Merrick Garland is paying attention because this needs to be investigated. This is a crime.
Yeah, it's criminal.
Doctoring, forging guidelines to make your pseudoscience quackery fit the narrative that you want it to fit. That's a crime. And here's a report from Caitlin on CNN about the forging of information. Caitlin Collins.
And this started basically day one of the pandemic. Remember last year when the CDC official was putting out warnings about what was coming our way with the pandemic, as we were flying back with former President Trump from a trip to India, and he was enraged by that because of what it did to the stock market. So his influence over what the CDC was saying and telling the American people about the pandemic started basically from day one. And so now we have a CDC spokesperson saying that yes, there was a guidance that came out that wasn't as specific as it could have been based on the science because of undue influence that was happening over CDC documents. It also says there were a few documents that came out that were purportedly from the CDC but weren't actually authored by the CDC. So using their name and their credibility, but it wasn't actually a CDC document according to what the spokesperson is now saying. And this is something that we saw in the Trump administration with a lot of different agencies.
Wow. My God.
And you have to remember, they were doing this so that they could keep businesses and schools open, so that they could tweak what the guidance was on how people were to go, on how governments and states and businesses were going to go about protecting people. And it's just appalling when you think about the fact that it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just not ordering PPE and not sending out PPE and making states bid each other. It was this kind of meddling with the guidance and not having a federal plan and not having a federal uniform this is what we're all going to do across all 50 states, and trying to undercut and censor, our scientists and our immunologists. A combination of all of those things led to the poorest outcomes on the planet. The United States of America, we are number one at killing people from COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
We had the worst possible response of any country on the planet. And it had a lot to do with the mishandling by this administration.
Yep.
No doubt about it now. What did we learn from the Vanity Fair article about Jared's stash of vaccines? Well, a lot of people wanted to be on this list to get one of these vaccines. They were called shot chasers. How the officials in Trump's lame duck White House scrambled to score COVID-19 vaccinations. In December and January, a long-planned effort to vaccinate essential federal workers was thrown into turmoil, breeding suspicion, infighting, and shameless attempts to crash the list.
Wow.
Because, of course, you're looking at a lame duck session. You're having an outgoing president who's only going to be there for a little while before the inauguration of the new president. So how do you decide who gets a vaccine, who doesn't? You have to be an essential worker to the national functioning to get on that list.
Yeah.
So the quest to get on that list, which was closely guarded by Mark Meadows' office, and a small cadre of NSC officials had a long list of people begging for that vaccine, begging for the vaccine. And these ranged from representatives of cabinet secretaries to White House desk jockeys, to those that prepared to leverage their connections to Donald Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. So Jared's buddies.
Yep.
Some of the people that were begging to get to the front of the line were notorious, according to the Vanity Fair article, worked for bosses who became notorious for publicly disregarding pandemic safeguards. It's just the most shameful of shaming things to see that the people that were actively misinforming, misrepresenting what people should be doing during a pandemic were they and their staff fighting to get to the front of the line to get a vaccine.
Yep.
They were discrediting in the public. What did we learn from the USIC report? Well, here are a couple of the findings. There are more findings, but the USIC has concluded with high confidence that Putin, Russia, intervened again in our presidential elections to try to help Donald Trump. The report did detail some of the players involved, Kalimnik, which you had heard of, and some new ones like Durkak. I don't know how you pronounce that. I think it's Durkak. Anyway, they were routing Russian disinformation to people close to the president, including Rudy Giuliani and Senators Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley.
Oh, God help
Boy,
us.
that Ron Johnson, he sure does get around.
He does. Yep.
We keep finding more and more about him. Here are two of the judgments they found in this report, and there are more. They also talked about China and Iran and other countries. But here are some of the key findings. The first one is that there was no indication of foreign actors attempting to alter any technical aspects of the voting process, including voter registrations, ballots, vote tabulation, and reports of the results. They assessed that it would be difficult for foreign countries to manipulate election processes at scale throughout the country on a massive scale without being detected by intelligence on themselves through physical and cybersecurity monitoring around voting systems all across the country. And because of the post-election audits, including the ones like the one they had in Georgia where they matched the ballots to the signatures. They hand counted every single ballot. So we know because they did this several times that there was no evidence of physical tampering. All the stuff we heard Sidney Powell saying about the tampering by Venezuela and Hugo Chavez and the machines, they are saying in this report that did not seem to happen. There's no indication.
All right.
Okay. Second big thing that came out of this report is that they did assess that Russian President Putin authorized, and a range of Russian government organizations did conduct influence operations aimed at denigrating President Biden's candidacy, the Democratic Party, supporting former President Donald Trump, undermining public confidence in the electoral process, and exacerbating sociopolitical divisions in the U.S. Like sending people to go fight each other over masks?
Yep, exactly.
Yes. Unlike what happened in 2016, there was not a persistent Russian cyber effort to gain access into the election infrastructure. Once again, no physical tampering of machines or ballots or vote tabulation, none of that. These were disinformation campaigns that were waged by sending information through political allies, U.S. officials, media, people in the U.S. A key element of Moscow's strategy in this election cycle was to use proxies that were linked to Russian intelligence to push influential narratives, including misleading and unsubstantiated allegations about President Biden to the U.S. media, to U.S. officials, and prominent individuals such as Rudy Giuliani and Senators Ron Johnson and
Chuck Grassley.
Others. Yes, that's what the report says.
Wow.
But, they did not find any credible. There was attempted interference from China. There wasn't evidence that any of it was successful. There was interference by Iran and other countries that they found. They attempted it. They tried misinformation campaigns, the same as Russia did. But there was no physical tampering. They were not successful at physically tampering, as we found from multiple audits, and also the lawsuits about elections. There was simply no evidence of widespread voter fraud or election tampering. Here's what Ron Wyden said in reaction to some of the reports that indicate that the Russian intelligence operatives were promoting their claptrap wild conspiracy theories through senior government officials, through Republicans, including people that were on the Senate Finance and Homeland Security committees. And he said that the Senate must never again be used to push dangerous foreign propaganda designed to interfere with our elections. Well, I mean, that's a nice thought, I think. I don't think that you can stop that Russian and foreign influence of senators, and especially when you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, no kidding.
That believes that Jewish space lasers started the wildfires in California. Okay? That believes these anti-Semitic, racist, conspiracy, QAnon, blah, blah, blah. When you have people like that, those people are easily primed for conspiracy theories and cult-like behaviors. They're primed to accept this nonsense, believe it, and share it and spread it. So I would love to believe that we have seen this undue influence amongst our members of Congress, and that we have learned that these intelligence reports and this information is telling us we need to do something to stop it. But will we? I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath or stand while we wait to find out. I will say this. A voter fraud study conducted by MIT over 20 years has found that levels of voter fraud are exceedingly rare. It occurs only 0.00006% nationally. And in some states, it is even less likely at 0.00004% or less. So it is 5 times less likely that voter fraud will happen than you getting hit by lightning. You are 5 times less likely to have voter fraud happen than you are to get hit by lightning. Wow. You are more likely to get hit by lightning than voter fraud happening.
Yikes.
So, the calls for our election security, that we don't have a breach of election security, as we've seen from all of the intelligence reports, as we've seen from the studies from, scientific studies like MIT. They're a bunch of hogwash.
Yep.
They're, hyped up so that they can push voter suppression. And it's something that we need to be very vigilant about, as I have spoken about on previous shows. So keep your eyes wide open, paying attention so that we can defend our democracy That's all I have for you this evening here in Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Good night. God bless. Keep washing your hands, social distancing, using your masks, and for God's sake, get vaccinated.
Definitely.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.